Hello everyone, welcome to another live, and my apologies for being late. Had some technical issues with my mic, but all should be good to go. You can let me know down below if there are any sound issues. Otherwise, I will have to sign off and sign on again to fix. And if you're wondering what we're covering today, and if you notice, we're starting a new time for the summer. Saturdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. So hopefully we'll see how that goes. You can let us know a few weeks in how that schedule is working out. And today we're covering resistance work in splits. But I'll also show how you can incorporate resistance in other positions that are not just splits, because maybe you're like, splits are cool, but I kind of want to get more flexible in a deep squat position, in a lunge, and or even a forward fold. So we'll go over those examples. Also, you can win a prize by participating in our global Stretch It competition on our app. So if you are a subscriber and you would like to join in on the fun, definitely check that out. Front splits start on Monday. I believe that's our challenge. My team didn't write if it was a challenge or like a boot camp, so I'm assuming it's a challenge, just in case. But today is quite exciting because I think resistance work is just tremendously helpful in all aspects, right? Often we treat one or the other separately. It's like, okay, I gotta lift and then I gotta stretch, which you very much can do, but being a lifestyle mentor, online coach, however you want to call it, I found that people don't have all the time to spend on different movement disciplines. As much as they would like to do Pilates, yoga, strength training, and flexibility, something naturally has to give. And one of the best ways you can incorporate some strength training is while you're stretching. And how can you do that? Well, you can invite outside loads to your positions that will aid in the actual passive stretch. So just adding to the gravity feel of certain positions. And it probably could help in you connecting better to the stretch. Sometimes people can't feel as if, for example, a forward fold, right? So if you have really not only tight hips, but you have tight hamstrings, you might not connect with the backs of your thighs, which is what you're primarily trying to stretch, right? So something I would suggest even before you add load is to widen your stance, add something underneath so the floor is higher, and tilt the hip and try to hinge from there. Cool. Now, one way you can actually use weight in order to improve your hip hinge is to practice your Romanian deadlifts. And there are a lot of discussions between what's different between a Romanian deadlift, stiff-legged deadlift, versus a conventional deadlift. Some people say what makes an RDL an RDL is that you start the movement at the top versus at the bottom. For me personally, and it's not that I'm right or wrong, but just based off experience, what makes an RDL is that your knees are in a fixed position and you emphasize the hip hinge over bending your knees more in a conventional dead, which the point is to lift as much weight as possible depending on your rep range, where the RDL is, in my opinion, a lot more technical and is not just kind of lift it up and put it down, but mastering that hinge. Now, of course, I'm not at home, as you can see. I am somewhere else. If I was at my boyfriend's apartment, he has kettlebells, which would have been tremendously helpful, but I'm going to use water bottles instead. And I didn't want to borrow the dumbbells from the building gym because they would be suspicious. It's like, where's she's going with those dumbbells? So we're going to use water bottles. Or I'm just going to use one water bottle to demonstrate how you would use weight. Okay? In emphasizing moving from your hip hinge and then coming up from there. So not only are you trying to teach your hip to flex and not move from your low back, the weight will help guide that pathway. And at the bottom of the RDL, this is the toughest part, right? Because this is where your hamstrings are stretched, your erectors are stretched, and where they have to generate force to come back up. So not only are you introducing a little more stretch to your hamstrings, but you're also building muscle as well as strength. And then you ask, well, Alicia, my knees are bent, and typically knees aren't bent in a forward fold. You are correct. Sometimes, however, you have to start where you are. Some people have such tight hamstrings that they have to bend their knees a little bit and they still feel their hamstring stretch. So they are moving the needle somewhat, right? If you want to incorporate weight with straight legs, you could practice what's called a Jefferson curl. And Jefferson curls can be practiced with a dumbbell. If this was a dumbbell, you could hold it or hold two dumbbells like this, right? Straight legs, rolling forward, letting the weight pull you down and carry you up. If you were holding on to a kettlebell, you will hold on to one kettlebell, rolling down, rolling up. Now, if you are fairly flexible already, you would then step on a higher platform so that you actually have somewhere to go, right? That's a more advanced modification, because if you have a pretty good forward fold with your body weight already, naturally, yes, we are. It'll be on our main feet as a reel. Naturally, the weight's going to pull you past your feet, right? Now, you could hold, this is a great question. How long do you hold the Jefferson curl? You could hold it for anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute to pretty much where you could tolerate it. It's not a great position to hold for a long time just because you're standing on a platform and, with your head down for that long. You just have to be careful to come up slowly. Jefferson curls you can actually do as reps. So you go down and up. You could even do a few and then hold the bottom position. And I will start with 30 seconds. 30 seconds is a great place to start, because if you're not used to that range and you're not used to adding low to forward fold work. Also, this is important. I was going to say this, but I cut myself off. I would first practice rolling down, bending the knees, and coming up, just to kind of test it out. Because if you haven't done this position or exercise before, it can feel intense. And I want you to feel stable in executing it. So even if you think you can handle it, just spending a few reps, rolling down, bending the knees, and rolling up to get that momentum going. And then the next set, maybe you'll try keeping the legs straight for the down and up portion. Fantastic. So this is the other one, and we're still going to talk about splits, but the splits is the finale movement, if you will, because I think there's so many more positions we can add load to in helping to with the range of motion. Another fine example is the low squat position, right? People are trying to improve their ankle mobility, knee mobility, and hips in getting into this low squat position. And what you can do, again, using my water bottle as an example, you could hold a dumbbell goblet style or even a kettlebell goblet squat style, can't talk today, and using the weight to help sit down lower. And you can even swivel while you're holding the weight in front of you, right? This is also killer in trying to get that upper back more upright, right? So having weight actually reveals how far forward you are leaning. And now it becomes a strength exercise in having the upper back stabilize. Because if you were going into more technical lifts, like the front squat, which you don't have to do, you got the weight on the front, racked in the front. So if you round forward, the weight's going, and so will you. So this is a great starting point. And it doesn't have to be heavy at first. I think one of the things you have to think about is it's okay to start small. We're not going anywhere, right? We're not participating in the Olympics. You could start small and slowly but surely just add a little more so that you have that confidence, right? Because if you don't have some confidence going into an exercise, it could really inhibit your progress. And also just mess with your mental state and thinking that you're not going to improve, that you're discouraged. Oh, look at my position. It's not great. Yeah, that's why we're training, to get better at something. If we were already good at that something, we wouldn't be training and we wouldn't have this discussion. So it's okay if your positions look ugly at first, they will get better, right? And then you have something to look forward to and feel proud of when you see that improvement happen. The next one I wanted to go into, because another issue with the low squat is yes, depth, is yes, rounding forward, but the abduction portion, the inner thighs. And one of my favorite ways to practice that is adding weight to your straddle. Now, I wish I think this is better. You know what? Let me get the stool. Should I get the stool? Because this is too high. No, I could do it here. Let me just raise it higher. So let's pretend this is your weight bench, right? My apologies, such a mess. Clean up, Alicia. My goodness, how embarrassing. Poof. This is a little high, but if this was 2 dumbbells, wide legs, hinge forward, coming back up. Let me adjust the camera a little bit so you can see better. Cool. The seated position helps to keep the thighs wide and offers a nice stretch to the inner thighs, right? Which could also help improve your straddle splits. And I wanted to start seated because this is a little more accessible than if we were to do this. The first example I was going to show, but I said, no, hold on, is when you've mastered that and you somewhat have a decent straddle, instead you will take either dumbbell or small barbell across your back, lower down, and push to come up, right? That's now going to add or help with the stretch and strengthen inner thighs and some hamstring as well to get up from the bottom, which will also translate into improved range of motion for your low squat and for your straddle. Win-win. The next one I want to show how you could use resistance is the good old, my favorite, couch stretch. Now, you could use dumbbells too. I would use dumbbells because this is a lot of fun. It's intense, so I warn you. Using my water bottles again. Have to be careful because they are glass, so can't be careless here. Okay? The setup is the same. Block near surface, knee on the block, coming up, dumbbells, bring it down. You could even do light pulses here, but when holding it down like this, you can't help but just go low. Especially if you have dumbbells assisting with this effort. It is killer, okay? And much like what I demonstrated with the Jefferson curl, you could do like 3 to 5 slow pulses and hold the last one. If you don't have weight, you're like, Alicia, this is great, but I don't have no freaking dumbbells. You're killing me. You could actually produce force from yourself. What does that look like? That is an isometric effort. So in pails and rails, you will assume a position and you will contract both the lengthened side and the shortened side of that stretch. If I were to stay in this example, and yes, some are easier to do than others, depending on your setup and what you have available in your home space or in your gym space if you choose to train elsewhere, is that you need something firm to push against in order to produce that tension. And you might find as a beginner, you won't be able to produce high levels of tension just yet because you're now just getting accustomed to what that entails, what that takes. So if I were to assume the first position and not lower the hips, but move into the first part. So we've seen this stretch before. How I would produce tension in trying to target hip flexors and quads is push my foot against the pad. And you will feel the lengthened side of the stretch tense up. And every short breath you take, because your breathing pattern does have to change in rhythm in order to help produce this higher tension effort, you hold your highest level of effort for 10 to 15 seconds, and then you try to get as if you want to get your foot off the pad, focusing on the shortened side of this stretch, the glutes and the hamstring side. You try to tense up and squeeze as much as you can, so much where your body starts to shake. That's about where you want to go. And then you can feel the fruits of your labor, if you will. That's another way you can introduce resistance, not just with outside load. I would do both. I would try to experiment as with many types of resistance as you can and see what works best for you. Now with splits, this is where, of course, we have the finale. So this is assuming we've already warmed up hamstrings, hip flexors, we've done it all, right? And let's say you are still off the ground. I'm going to pretend I'm off the ground. Okay. You could use a dumbbell, but that is a more advanced approach because you have to make sure that your tissues are prepared for that extra effort. So before you add weight, I would actually try to master isometrics in a split position first before you add load. And that is what we demonstrated with the heel to butt stretch. So if you assume your front split position, even if you're off the ground, as if you're trying to scissor your legs together through the floor and push down as hard as you can with both front leg and back leg, and then on the opposite, the shortened side, is almost like you're actively trying to get lower, not by pushing down, but as if you're trying to pull the legs in towards your pelvis at the same time, and then you let go. The reason why it might not be helpful to hold the weight by your side is because you'll probably hit the floor. So once you've got used to holding a split, even with your pelvis not touching, this is where you could probably add weight. But that's a far more advanced approach because, again, you have to hold yourself up with your legs. If your tissues are not used to that demand, you can get injured 100%. So that's why I think it's important before we start adding resistance to the splits is to start introducing isometrics first. Get used to that feeling in producing your own bouts of effort. And then once you have your tissues used to that, you can add the weight, if that makes sense. Oh, and I know, okay, so I know it splits because I know we love the splits, but I have to show you one more bonus upper body stretch you very much can use with dumbbells. This is one of my favorites, but please be careful, is when you elevate your upper back with the block. Pretend this is a dumbbell and you use the weight to extend, but I have to go this way so I could extend all the way. This is a killer stretch for your shoulders. And imagine if we're actually draped over a weight bench, so there's no floor. I would grab light weights. I'm talking about the twos because that is now placing a lot more load, your wrists, your elbows, your shoulders, and then you could practice your pullovers. Gnarly. So my point I made at the beginning of the live is if you're frustrated with finding the time to address strength and flexibility concerns, one of the better ways to tackle that is to introduce more range of motion in your strength training. You will see a decline in how much weight you could push and pull because now that you're dialing up the range of motion, that is one pillar of intensity that you're changing. Naturally, you will probably have to stick to the weight or maybe decrease it to accommodate that change. But at least you are now teaching your tissues to move through a larger range of motion, which inevitably will make them a lot more resilient against load and other forces that they might find themselves in outside training, which is what happens when we get injured. It's like the body finds itself in positions that it's not quite used to. But if you actually train in those awkward positions, you have a better chance of, or you lessen the risk of getting injured. You can still get injured because the risk is never 0%. It might be like 0.5. But I wanted to reserve time post live in case any of you had questions about what we covered today. Any questions about the weight and whatnot. Also, as a reminder, we have our Stretch It competition on the app. Front Splits Challenge begins tomorrow, and wouldn't it be fun to incorporate some of these resistance recommendations to those exercises? And I'm hanging out for a little bit because I did sign in late, so just want to make sure I give everyone ample time to listen and then to type their questions if there are any. If you're just joining the live, it will be on replay on our main feed as a reel. So you'll be able to see it from beginning to end. And if you are just tuning in and were wondering what we are speaking about, resistance in front splits, but I covered more than front splits because just in case you're like, I like that, but I want to see how resistance plays a role in other positions besides front splits. Come on, little Mike. Too floppy. The little Mike's too floppy. Boop. If you're watching the replay and wondering why I'm not saying anything, is because I'm in this live version, watching the comments roll up, seeing if I catch any questions. I don't want to sign off too soon. I started already. We started a half an hour ago. We started at 1 p.m. Eastern. We're now just ending. I'm just waiting for questions. And then I'll end. Do we have anything to share? I'm going to hang out for 3 more minutes because I signed in at 1:06. What is the best approach to resistance training when it comes to a weak hamstring? Is to train it in a way that it does not hurt. So if you want to strengthen your hamstrings, I would make sure to include hinging exercises and to get on a leg curl machine of some sort, be it lying or seated. And that will be the entry point to begin. And of course, you will start with the lightest weight that you can handle, and then you progressively overload from there, as well as mastering the technique. Hamstrings are tough because when it comes to accessibility and home workouts and whatnot, it's tough to load the hamstrings unless you have some sort of setup, meaning with quadriceps and glutes, you could do squats and lunges for days, right? You can make them harder by going on a deficit, going as low as you can. But with hamstrings, you need weight. You need weight. And that's why I think they often get neglected, because people try to get away with working hamstrings with other exercises that don't target them well. And you have to add load in some capacity. And I feel like hamstrings widely are underdeveloped for that reason. And you can do, not Jefferson curl. I can't remember the name of the exercise. Nordic hamstring curls, but you have to anchor your ankles, lower your body down from the knees and come back up. Killer exercise. And even in your front splits, you can incorporate isometrics now in introducing that strength intelligence even at that lower level to your hamstrings. Just squeezing and producing your own resistance does set up the base. Alrighty, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. And this will be our new time going forward, Saturday at 1 p.m. Do you use ankle weights in your training? I don't, but that doesn't mean that I don't think they are helpful. It's just because I don't use them, but they very much well can help with aerial splits and just feeling that extra load, and also practicing control if you're doing handstand splits. I do think they play, or they're, what's the word I want to use? They're more effective with inverted splits. But that's a lot more niche. That's a lot more niche. Cool. Super. There's also bands, but I forgot to bring my bands. That classic band exercise where you wrap the bands around the arches, bring it behind your low spine, and you open up the straddle. I think that's good for someone who already has a straddle, because it could be quite intense for someone who does not. It's like you're trapped in this torture device and you have nowhere to go. It could be a little scary. But thanks everyone for joining. Looking forward to seeing everyone next Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll have the reminder set up on our stories. And if you have any questions or comments, make sure you leave them down under this reel, as it will be available for viewing on our main feed. Thank you always for taking the time to stop by, and I will see everyone again soon. Bye.